So today is Thursday, December 10th, 2020. I'm Joe Reingold with the Dallas Jewish Historical Society, and I'm interviewing Marsha Lefkof this afternoon. Hi, Marsha. How are you?
Hi.
Well, tonight is Hanukkah. It's a special time for everybody, and we would like to know a little bit about your background, your parents, your grandparents, if you happen to know where they were from, where they lived, what kind of work that they did, what kind of lives they led in whatever countries they lived in, your grandparents and your parents, whatever you know about them.
All right. Well, my grandmother on my father's side, she was born in Boston. So her parents, I don't know where they were. They were from Eastern Europe somewhere. My grandfather, my father's father, he was born in Lithuania, in Vilnius, and I think he came over here somewhere around 1918. And he came over because he was going to be drafted into the Lithuanian army. And at that time, Jews that were drafted into the army in Lithuania did not come back. So he left the country with his brother. And the interesting thing about his family, or what his journey, he came on a ship with his brother, and he was taken off the ship in Boston because he had developed smallpox on the ship. So they took him off the boat and brought him to the hospital. His brother was not allowed off the ship. So his brother could not disembark until they got to Mexico. So he ended up settling in Mexico, and they lost track of each other for 50 years. But at that time, when 50 years passed, he and my grandmother and my two uncles were living in Tucson, Arizona, and my uncle went down to Mexico and managed to track down my grandfather's brother. And so they got reunited after 50 years. And it turns out that he has a huge family down in Mexico, and they really thrived. And a lot of them ended up settling in Monterey. And so we didn't have any contact with them until several years ago. There was I think it was a Jewish Federation fundraiser in Dallas, and George W. Bush was the guest speaker. And this young guy, Jaime Karakowski, introduced him. I'm not sure if it was Federation, but it was one of the big fundraisers in town. And so we saw the picture in the Texas Jewish Post, and Karakowski was my grandfather's original name, and he changed it to Gordon when he came to this country. But so this Jaime Karakowski still has the same name. So somehow my husband was able to track down his contact information. So we contacted him, and it turns out that was my grandfather's brother's family. So, and a bunch of the young ones live in Houston now, including Jaime. So, we've talked and exchanged pictures, and their family's just huge. So at some point when this pandemic is over, I want to go to Houston and meet up with them. So yeah, that turned out to be a real positive story.
Are there still quite a few still living in Mexico, or are they spread out at this point?
Our generation, I think, is in Monterey, as far as I know. Okay. At least Jaime's parents are in Monterey, but most of the kids are living in Houston, and they all have kids. So it's just a really big family. So that's great because the rest of my grandfather's family, his his father died before the World War II, and the mother and two of his brothers, I think, were killed in the Holocaust. And he also had a sister, is my grandfather's sister, was married to a non-Jewish German officer from World War I. And they were living in Germany. And so when the Holocaust happened, they fled with their daughter. But their son had been in a boarding school. And so they paid someone to take the son out and join up with them. And so this guy took a bunch of Jewish kids to a forest, left them in the forest, and they were all gunned down. So, so that's a sad part of the story. But the positive part is that at least, my grandfather's family continued on in Mexico. So that's my father's side. My father's mother, she was born in Boston, and I think she had 2 or 3 sisters and 1 brother. So they all grew up in the Boston area and had their families in Massachusetts. So, and there's an interesting story with one of them, one of the cousins, one of my father's cousins. His parents owned a diner right near MIT in Boston. And so the diner had been there for years and years, but then the land became so valuable, and my father's cousin and his brother sold the land, and they donated some of the money to MIT. So now there's a plaque up in one of the buildings in my cousin's father's name. So that's an interesting side thing. Yeah. So,
Marsha, where did you grow up as a child, and what was your childhood like and your neighborhood like, and what did you like to do for fun? What was your life like?
Well, I was born my parents married in Providence, Rhode Island. And so I lived in Providence. My mother's family settled in Providence. So that was, I think my grandfather came here in 1904, and my grandmother came around 1918, somewhere around there. And they were from Belarus, from the Minsk area. And anyway, so I grew up in Providence until I was 11. And my family, my mother's family, was pretty close knit. So when I lived there, we saw a lot of my family, and my father's parents lived in Providence too. So, we were very close with the family. And, we lived in a Jewish area, and I loved to roller skate. So I used to roller skate all over the neighborhood. People weren't so fearful back then.
Right.
And I have 1 brother. So that was, my life there was pretty great. And then we moved to Massachusetts when I was 11. And so we we moved to Lawrence, Massachusetts, which was a big mill town back then. And my father worked in men's clothing. He had a business, men's clothing manufacturing company in Providence, which unfortunately went under. So he took a job with a different men's clothing company in Lawrence. And I spent my teenage years there. And then I went to University of Connecticut for college, and then I became a physical therapist. And so I did physical therapy in Connecticut, and then in Michigan for a couple of years. And then I went back to graduate school at Boston University, and got an advanced degree in physical therapy with specialty in teaching. So when that was done, I took a job down here in Dallas at Texas Women's University, teaching in their physical therapy program. So that's what brought me to Dallas.
But I want to back up just a minute, though. Hang on,
sure.
Marsha. Yeah, no, that was good. I just want to ask you if you can remember any organizations or affiliations that you and your family had growing up, either in Providence or in Boston in the area. You know, what kind of things were they involved in, and were you involved in growing up, and even through teenage and high school and college area years?
Well, my mother was very active as a volunteer with Jewish organizations in Providence. So she was very, very active in the Jewish War Veterans Auxiliary. And I think there was another one. It might have been her temple or her synagogue. We belonged to Temple Beth Israel in Providence. And that was a conservative synagogue. And I'm not sure, you know, my mother unfortunately died when I was 16. So, you know, my memories of all she did were a little limited, but she did sing in the choir at her synagogue. And so she was very involved. My father, he himself, he was a very quiet guy. So he was never involved in organizations. Well, I say that, but later on, he did kind of adopt a refugee family, and that was very nice. But mostly he wasn't involved in organizational work. But my mother was very involved, and my grandparents, you know, my mother's father had been president. They were in an Orthodox congregation when the kids were younger, and he was president of his congregation. So he was very active. So my mother instilled in me, you know, a love for volunteering. So when I was in high school, I was very involved in NEFTY, the Temple Youth Group, and most of the guys I dated were from NEFTY. And I did BBYO for a while, but I like NEFTY better. And I was also I did a lot of volunteer work at the cerebral palsy clinic in Lawrence. And that's, you know, how I formed my love for physical therapy. So, and I remember my mother was involved in the March of Dimes, and I remember going around, you know, collecting money, going door to door, collecting money with her. So yeah, so we have a long history of volunteerism.
So when you came to Dallas, what kind of things did you jump into? What did you get involved in? What were you interested in doing when you were a newcomer here?
Well, in Boston, I lived in Boston for a few years before I moved here. And, you know, so I got involved with, what was it called? United Jewish Appeal up there. That's what Federation was called. So I did get active with them, and helped out with their telethon, and actually got to know, what's his name? I forgot it, never mind. one of Trump's big supporters. Anyway, never mind that. So when I came to Dallas, let's see, what did I get involved in? Well, I met my husband 6 weeks after I moved here. And so my family was amazed, you know, that I came to Dallas. This is my joke. I came to Dallas to meet my New York Jewish doctor. Yeah, because he was I met him 6 weeks after I moved. He was an intern at Presbyterian Hospital, and I was teaching at the Texas Women's University building right behind Presbyterian. And so we met, and, you know, that was it, you know. So, yeah, so we married, it was about 15 months later. Yeah, my family just could not believe it. Wow. So, yeah, so I got married and we joined. Um, I got active in younger set from Federation, and let's see, what else did we join? I don't know, that's so long ago. I don't, but I was active in younger set for a while, and then
How
I
did
got
your
active.
husband, how did your husband come to pick Dallas?
He, well, he was actually born at Fort Hood. His father was stationed at Fort Hood, and so he's actually a Texan. So when he was a year old, they were transferred back to New York, and his father worked for the Army Air Force Exchange. And when he was, so they lived in New York until he was 14. And then his father was transferred down here to the Army Air Force Exchange. So he's been in Dallas ever since then, since he was 14. And yeah, so he was kind of they moved from a very Jewish area in Long Island. They moved down to Oak Cliff because that's where the Army Air Force Exchange is located. So, they went from a big Jewish area to no, almost no Jews.
Right.
It's a big culture shock.
Oh, yeah.
That was in 67. And so that was difficult for him. And, they were kind of hidden Jews because they didn't realize how far away they were from the Jewish community. So they didn't really get active at all at that time. But then they got when Gary was in college, his parents got transferred to Germany. So they lived in Munich for 5 years. And Gary went over and spent some time over there. And Gary speaks fluent German, so he loved it. He's one of the few Jews that really loved Germany. Had wonderful experience. So anyway, so I got real active. I got active in younger set and in somewhat in B'nai B'rith and NCJW at that time, and some in Hadassah. So I did all the organization work back then. And we got married. Rabbi Klein from Emmanuel married us. So we stayed at Emmanuel until the girls were bat mitzvahed. And I was very active at Emmanuel. And during that time, I got active in city politics. And I worked on Max Goldblatt's campaign for mayor, and then we worked on Annette Strauss's campaign, and I got involved in the arts. And so I'm going to say, so I got to be on the board of the Dallas Chamber Orchestra, and served as president for 2 years, and then my councilman Max Wells appointed me to the Cultural Affairs Commission when it split off from the Parks Board. So I was on Cultural Affairs for about 6 years and loved every minute of it. Just loved it, loved. And, got to know everybody in the arts community. And I was on Cultural Affairs when the Meyerson opened, so got to go to the opening, got to go when the organ was dedicated, and got to go when the Queen of England was here. They did a concert. It was just a really phenomenal time. I loved it.
A lot of Jewish women in Dallas, from my talk before,
Yes.
quite a few Jewish women got very involved in the cultural arts departments in all different, sitting on different boards, but we were quite a force to be reckoned with, I think.
Quite a force.
Yes.
The one I was trying to think after I heard you talk, I was trying to remember the name of the lady who was the primary fundraiser for the Meyerson. And she was Jewish, and I can't remember her name, but
I'll look it up for you.
yeah, boy, was she a force. Yeah, thank you. I would like to know. That's driving me nuts. I think she and her husband ended up moving to San Diego after that, but boy, she was terrific.
So I'm
Um,
curious, what are your girls doing now? What is your family doing?
let's see, we're at Shalom. We moved to Shalom after we left Emmanuel. We moved to Shalom, and so let's see. Heather went to UT, and she went on the birthright trip from Hillel down there,
Mhm.
and met her husband on the birthright trip.
Ah,
And
that's
yeah, it's
perfect.
great.
Perfect
Yeah,
story.
it's really perfect.
Yeah.
And yeah, they've videoed Heather and Michael talking about their experience down there. And so yeah, so they met on that trip, and Heather was very active with the Hillel
Mhm.
at UT, and now all right, her husband, Michael's a wonderful guy. He's now a physician, and Heather got her PhD in psychology, so she's in private practice psychologist. And Michael he is specialized in geriatrics, so now he's medical director. He works for a company that contracts with nursing homes. So he's medical director at several nursing homes, and he works with residents at the medical school down there. So they're doing wonderful, and I'm waiting for grandchildren. I've been waiting.
I'm sure it'll happen soon.
Well, we'll see. When it happens, it'll be
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
So my other daughter, Melissa, she's still single. She went to Texas State, and so she did a couple of she majored in English and minored in political communication. She did a couple of internships in Washington for Pete Sessions, which we were very, very grateful to him for that. So that was a great experience. Um, so she ended up, she had a little more difficulty figuring out what she wants to do. But now, so she worked at several different jobs, and her last job was at Childress Fabrics. And, she ended up doing a lot of their computer work and purchasing and, some accounting, and discovered she has a love of accounting. So now she's taking virtual courses at Richland to become an accountant. And she just got certified in QuickBooks. So, so she's going to take some more courses, and then, hopefully she'll get a job in accounting. She seems to really love it. And it's
Good.
like, "Ooh, this is
Yeah.
great, Heather." It's not something I want to do. I mean, Melissa, this is great. I'm really happy for her that she's found something she loves. So, sometimes.
Speaking of something you love, tell us about a project or some type of a work work order or something that you have worked on that you're very proud of.
Well, I'm very proud of my work on cultural affairs. I did, at that time, I chaired the long range planning committee. So we came up with a long range plan for cultural arts at that time. And so I was proud of that. And out of that was back in 92. The city was planning a huge commemoration of Columbus discovering America, the 500th anniversary. So I thought, well, gee, we ought to commemorate, the Jews that were expelled from Spain at the same time. So I ended up chairing this project with JCRC, co-chairing it. My co-chair was a lady from Mexico who had been raised Christian and discovered her Jewish roots. So she was my co-chair, and so we put on a year-long schedule of events commemorating the Jews being expelled from Spain. And the most exciting part of that is that over the course of the year, the Jewish community was able to identify about 1,000 Sephardic Jews in town that actually came out of the woodwork. And, you know, at that time they said, well, Marsha, we didn't think anyone wanted us. I guess the Ashkenazi Jews had not been so welcoming. So, you know, I was very, very proud of that, really proud. And I would have continued on with JCRC, but at that point, my husband was having a little bit of difficulty. He had to close his program because crazy reasons. So I at that point, I had to go back to work. So I had to quit doing volunteer work for a little while, but got back to it. And so let me think what else happened. That was 92. Oh yeah, and then we moved over to Shalom. I was very active at Emmanuel and chaired a few projects over there. And so coming over to Shalom, you know, I got involved in not chairing anything, but just, you know, helping out. And I did chair, you know, Mahjong tournament, and I did chair a few things. And I started working in the gift shop. And, you know, really enjoyed the gift shop. And they asked me if I would be the director for the gift shop. So I've been director of the gift shop for this about 3.5 years now.
And it's a great gift shop, by the way. It's
Oh, thanks.
It's wonderful.
Thanks.
It is.
Well, we come up first. If you Google Judaica in Dallas, we come up first.
Good.
We worked on that. So, yeah, and then, you know, we just had a really great Hanukkah boutique. And, you know, it was very exciting.
So I want to ask you now, this is one of my favorite questions for people who have lived here a long time but are not from here. When you first came to Dallas, what do you think the city was like versus what is it like now, in your opinion?
Well, when I first came, there was a lot from, you know, native Texans. There was a lot of resistance to Northerners coming to Dallas. So, you know, at first I felt a lot of Yankee go home kind of attitude. Yeah, it was an adjustment for me coming. You know, I lived in Boston before I moved here, and I love Boston. I love that city. You know, I was all over the place and doing something all the time. And you know, but I hated winter. One of the reasons I came, I hated winter. And we'd had the big chill of 80 just before I came. You know, but I did miss the people, and there was just so much to do up there, and it's so beautiful, and the beach and the mountains, gorgeous. So it was an adjustment for me to get used to being in Texas. I think one of the reasons I got involved in the arts is because in Boston, I love the arts. There was so much going on all the time. And, you know, I had seasons tickets to the ballet, and I went to see, you know, plays all the time. And, you know, Boston was such an exciting city. So, you know, I got involved in the arts here because I really wanted to see it develop more, become more like Boston, you know, more of a cultural center. And, you know, I think Annette Strauss, when she was mayor, that was one of her main goals, is to develop the culture more. So, you know, so I had this vision for downtown Dallas becoming a more thriving cultural area. And I mean, some of that has happened. I mean, it's, you know, it's some things like when they built the Meyerson, they cut out, they were supposed to have like a street area with cafes and shops and, you know, musicians and everything. And they cut that out when they had to cut their budget. And I thought that was not a good thing. But anyway, so, you know, I mean, some of it has come to fruition, and, the Arts District is nice, and the Clyde Warren Park is tremendous. Oh, is that terrific?
Yes, it is.
So, yeah. So they've made some strides in the Arboretum. Gary and I went to one of the major fundraisers for the Arboretum. Had invited all the residents and medical people to come to the Arboretum one day. And that was before it is what it is now. And so he talked about his vision and what he wanted to see for the future. And, so the Arboretum I'm sure it's gone way beyond his vision. It's so beautiful. So that's a really nice thing. I've been in Dallas 40 years and met my husband here, had my girls here, and, it's
What
my
positive,
life.
what positive things have you seen happen with specifically the Jewish community here?
Well, it's grown. It's certainly
Yes.
grown quite a bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the challenge, it's certainly a challenge now because so many people have moved north, and so many young people are not joining congregations. So I think that's, that is an ongoing challenge. JCC is wonderful. I was very active at JCC too.
Mhm.
Oh, in fact, I started cultural arts at JCC. Oh, yeah, I almost forgot about that. I started cultural arts. And so that was back while I was doing cultural affairs. I wasn't working during that time. So, with the cultural arts, that's when they started having plays, and we had, and the art festival they had every fall, and the film festival that's still going. All of that came out of the cultural arts. So that was something else feel very good about.
And you have really left your mark here, that's for sure.
Yeah,
So,
thank
so I
you.
have one more, I have a concluding question, and that is
Okay.
anything else that you would like to tell us about that we haven't talked about? Anything that you're really proud of, or anything that you've accomplished that you would like to add to this interview?
Oof. Wow. Well, my husband and I, we're going to celebrate our 39th anniversary. So
Wow.
that's
That's good.
that's some,
Mazel
yeah,
tov.
thank you. That's a real good
Wonderful.
thing. I've made a lot
Wonderful.
of friends, and I think I've left my footprint. It's been good. It's been good for sure. I think I've told you the main things I'm proud of. I think having my girls is the thing I'm most proud of.
Mhm.
But, all of the, those projects I did, and now the shop, I'm very proud of doing those things. I love being involved, and I think I'll always be involved. And Heather, now is my daughter. She and her husband are in Austin, and so she is involved with Shalom Dallas, and she's on the JFS board, executive board, or one of the boards for the JFS down there. So I'm very proud of that too. Like, my legacy continues.
Well,
So
that's
yeah.
wonderful. Well, thank you so
Yeah.
much for being with us today, Marsha.
Oh, thank you. This was fun.
This
This
is
was
great. We appreciate it, and keep on doing all the wonderful work that you've been doing.
Oh, thanks.
All right.
Thanks. And I think after the pandemic, I'll join the Historical Society too.
Good. We'd love to have you.
Really love what you do.
Thank you. Well, have
All
a
right.
wonderful Hanukkah, and we'll see you
Thank you.
soon.
Thank you so much, Joe.
Sure.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.